Renowned 32-year-old cardiac surgeon Dr. Michael Owen lives in Alabama, Arcrick's Montgomery district, which is affluent. His life is an example of excellence and tenacity. He came from modest beginnings to become one of the Southeast's most reputable doctors. The regular wealthy population bustles the streets of Montgomery on a bright July evening. Elegant automobiles pass majestic mansions with well-kept lawns as their inhabitants make their way to hip restaurants and premium clubs. Michael is one of them, heading to Le, the most prestigious fine dining place in the city, in his sleek black Mercedes. As he makes his way through the well-known streets, Michael muses over his adventure. He was raised in a modest area on Alabama's west side by working-class parents and has always aspired to change the world. Hard effort and knowledge were ingrained in him by his mother, a schoolteacher, and father, a postal worker. Michael showed a remarkable knack for science at a young age, spending hours studying medical textbooks that he checked out from the neighborhood library. 5 years his senior, Henry Owen, his brother, had made a name for himself in the legal community as a well-known civil rights lawyer. Michael looked up to Henry as his role model and mentor, and he always encouraged him to strive for excellence. Even though Michael didn't think he had a chance, Henry persuaded him to apply to the esteemed modern-day University School of Medicine. Michael inhales deeply as he pulls into the Le Valet parking lot, relishing the occasion. This day is unique, with the successful completion of a groundbreaking, minimally invasive cardiac operation. He and his colleagues may have revolutionized cardiac care. Michael spent years perfecting the process, which should shorten recovery periods and enhance patient outcomes for thousands of patients. The Art Deco architecture and understated lighting of the restaurant convey elegance from the outside. Michael wants to appear his best for this event, so he straightens his tailored navy suit and adjusts his silk tie before giving his keys to the valet. Entering Le is like stepping into a different universe. A mood of refined luxury is created by the warm amber lighting, the delicate clink of exquisite Anna, and the murmur of intelligent conversation. The hotel manager smiles warmly at Michael after identifying him. "Good night, Prof. Owen. Your coworkers are seated already. Kindly proceed with me." Michael is proud of himself as he follows the maître d'hôtel around the dining room. He could have been washing dishes in a place like this 10 years ago in order to pay for his textbooks. These days, he is a welcomed guest, appreciated for his contributions to medicine rather than his capacity to pay the outrageous fees. Michael finds his colleagues seated around a round table in a quiet spot. His excellent research colleague, Dr. Emily Roseline, gets up to give him a big hug. "There you are, Michael. We were beginning to worry that you had lost interest in celebrating." Michael gives his pal and coworker a hug while laughing. "Emily, not a chance. We will savor each and every second of this moment as it is ours." Michael looks around at his team members' faces as he takes a seat. One of them is Dr. Arjun Deepak, an anesthesiologist, whose creative methods and steady touch were essential to their success. Dr. Amber Ann, the cardiologist, whose wisdom helped them improve their process, is seated next to him. And of course, there's Emily, without whom this whole thing could not have happened. A selection of champagnes is offered by the approaching waiter. After Michael selects a vintage Bollinger, glasses are soon being filled at the table. Emily lifts her drink, eagerness glimmering in her eyes. "To Dr. Michael Owen," she exclaims, "whose intellect and willpower have revolutionized the field of cardiac surgery, and to each and every one of us for realizing this absurd notion by believing in it." As the glasses clink together, Michael has a surge of feelings. This is what he has ever wanted to do: advance medical knowledge while truly improving people's lives. They are having a great talk as they sip their champagne. They talk about the ramifications of their findings, the possibility of more study, and the lives that might be spared. Michael is immersed in reflection as he recalls the difficult nights spent in the lab, the failures, and the moments of uncertainty. Amber's voice pierces his daydream. You haven't told us how it was inside today, Michael. When you realized it was working, what was going through your mind? Michael pauses to think about the query. You know, he starts, his voice low but emotive. There was this instant. Precisely when we were finishing the last suture, it dawned on me as I watched the patient's vitals stabilize on the monitors. Not only were we saving one life today, but we were also creating the possibility of saving thousands, even millions, of lives down the road. It was too much to handle. Arjun nods, his expression full of comprehension. I experienced that as well. It felt as though you were witnessing the forging of history. Michael is ecstatic to see that their efforts are having a genuine impact as they converse and rejoice more. Michael's sense of being watched persisted. He cast a quick glance around the eatery, focusing on the other patrons. While the majority were lost in their own chats, he saw a pair at an adjacent table who appeared to be particularly focused on their group. The man appeared uneasy in his stance, and his costly suit didn't match the graying hair at his temples. He was middle-aged. The younger, tastefully dressed woman next him kept peering over with a mixture of interest and, Michael suspected, contempt. He made an effort to ignore the emotion and concentrated on his coworker's accomplishments. Yet as the night went on, he couldn't help but notice that more and more people were looking in their direction. They seemed to be attracting attention with their laughter, which was maybe a little louder than the other diners' quiet tones. Ever astute, Emily leaned close to Michael. She said in a whisper, "Is everything okay? You seem distracted." Michael forced a laugh. "It's nothing," he reassured her. "Just taking it all in, I guess." However, he noticed two police officers in uniform walk into the restaurant as he was saying these comments. The maître d'hôtel looked at them bewilderedly as they had a brief conversation with him. A knot started to form in Michael's stomach. This was something he had seen and felt before, the abrupt change in the air. The way people's looks went from interest to distrust. Perhaps naively, he had thought that his career and social standing would protect him from such encounters. However, he saw that several things remained the same when the cops drew near their table. One of the officers remarked, "Excuse me, sir," speaking to Michael directly. "We need to see your identification." There was silence at the table. Emily began to respond, her cheeks flushed with fury, but Michael interrupted her with a raised hand. Experience had taught him that confrontation would only exacerbate the situation. "Of course, officer," Michael said, in a steady, collected voice, with a sharp awareness of everyone's eyes in the restaurant. Now, focused on their table, he groped for his wallet. Would this ever change? He wondered to himself, as he turned in his ID. Would the day come when he could enter a room and just be there? No need to prove he belonged there. The officer's partner was waiting, palm casually resting on his holster. As he scanned the ID with an air of meticulous attention, Michael could sense his coworker's anxiety and see the mix of incredulity and bewilderment on their expressions. The cop said, "Dr. Michael Owen," out loud, a hint of doubt in his voice. "Says here you're a surgeon at Modern Day University Hospital." "That's right," Michael answered, trying not to raise his voice too high. "My colleagues and I were celebrating a successful surgery today." The officer returned the ID, but his expression didn't change. "What brings you to a place like this too?" "It's not precisely, you get the picture." Unspoken, but obvious as day, the inference lingered in the atmosphere. "Not for folks like you." The words reverberated in Michael's head, reminding him of innumerable prior instances similar to this one. Emily finally broke her silence and said something. "This is ludicrous, officer. Surgeon Owen is well respected. As paying clients, we're here to celebrate a medical victory. What precisely is the issue?" The second cop moved forward after being silent for the while. "We're just doing our jobs, ma'am. Someone called to report some unruly people. We're just doing some research." Anger shot through Michael at the word unruly. They had been having fun and laughing, just like any other group celebrating a milestone, but not anymore. Their race was the true problem here, he understood. That with the conviction that came from years of comparable situations. "Officers," Michael began, his once calm voice now bearing a hint of steel, "I know you're doing your job. But I hope you also understand how this looks. I am here as a paying customer, as are my colleagues. We didn't do anything improper. Maybe you should take care of that if someone in this restaurant finds our presence objectionable in any way." The officers looked at one another, obviously not sure what to do. One person cleared his throat first. "Sir, we're not making any accusations against you, but we do need to verify IDs and have a few conversations. It follows protocol." Michael experienced a familiar wave of feelings as the officers started questioning each member of the group, rage, shame, and resignation. Despite his immense efforts to reach his current position and accomplish feats beyond his imagination, he found himself once more needing to establish his legitimacy to occupy a certain area. He wondered what his brother Henry would do in this circumstance, and thought of him. Henry had always been the one to take up injustice head-on, the warrior. Michael had taken a different route because he thought he could influence the system from within. But at times like this, he wondered if that was sufficient. Michael spotted the restaurant manager standing uneasily close by while the questioning went on. The manager stepped forward warily. "Dr. Owen," he continued quietly, "I want you to know that we did not contact the police. It wasn't us, albeit I'm not sure who did. Here, you and your coworkers are respected clients." Michael nodded, understanding the gesture but not really understanding what it altered. The harm had already occurred. What was supposed to be a happy occasion had become polluted, transformed into another illustration of the obstacles that persisted regardless of one's level of achievement. The police seemed satisfied at last, after what felt like an age. Their stances loosened a little as they took a step back. The first officer added, "Thank you for your cooperation," in a tone that seemed almost regretful. "Enjoy your evening." A thick quiet descended upon the table as they left. Michael noticed the range of emotions, including shock, rage, and confusion, on the faces of his coworkers. This was perhaps the first time that several of them had encountered such overt bigotry. It was simply another Tuesday in Michael's eyes. Emily extended her arm and covered Michael's hand. She added, "I'm so sorry," her voice stifled with regret. "That was, I don't even have words." Michael gave her a sad grin and squeezed her hand. "Emily, don't worry, you are not to blame. Really, nobody is at fault for this. Sometimes that's just the way things are." With a look of incredulity, Arjun shook his head. "But that ought not to be. Not for anyone, not even for you. This is just not acceptable." After remaining silent the entire time, Amber eventually spoke up. "Now, what should we do? Shall we depart? File a grievance?" Michael weighed his alternatives. He had a part of him that wanted to get away, go home, where he was safe and comfortable. However, there was a part of him that opposed the no shianli part. That had motivated him to become a surgeon in the first Placido, push limits, and defy expectations. "No," he ultimately stated in a stern tone. "This won't be allowed to spoil our evening. We are going to rejoice, which is precisely why we came here. Nobody can deny us this moment, because we've earned it." He lifted his drink and looked up into each of his colleagues' eyes. "To innovations in the fields of medicine and society," he declared. "May we never give up on pursuing advancement." Michael experienced a revitalized feeling of purpose as their glasses clinked. Yes, the episode had been embarrassing and upsetting, but it also served as a reminder of the significance of his work in the operating room and in dismantling obstacles. The remainder of the evening flew by in a whirl of laughing and discussion. colored by a growing awareness of their surroundings. Michael couldn't get rid of the feeling that everything had altered drastically as they were leaving the restaurant, not only for him, but for the both of them. Michael's mind raced as he drove home through Alabama's calm streets. He considered giving Henry a call and telling him what had happened. But he knew that his brother would be enraged and would want to file a lawsuit, right? Once. A part of Michael desired it as well, but he also considered whether there might be another way to handle this. Michael decided as he drew into his driveway. Despite how terrible it was, this event might serve as a spark for improvement. Now, he had a voice, a platform that others paid attention to. Perhaps it was time to use that voice to promote social change in addition to medical advancements. Michael arrived home with a fresh feeling of purpose. He was prepared to take on the fresh prospects and challenges that awaited him tomorrow. Michael woke up early the following morning, his thoughts still reeling from what had happened the night before. During his morning routine, which consisted of a quick jog around the neighborhood, a shower, and a light meal, he couldn't get rid of the sensation that today would be different. Even though it was early in the morning, he found the hallways of modern-day University Hospital to be rather empty. He nodded to the night shift workers, his route to his office, and several of them gave him a respectful but incredulous glance. The medical community was swiftly informed about the innovative surgery. After settling into his chair, Michael turned on his computer and checked his daily agenda. However, his focus strayed, his mind going back to what had happened in the restaurant. His fingers were hanging over the keyboard as he found himself starting a new document. He started typing almost without realizing it. He wrote about his experiences from all over his life and profession, and simply the night before. He wrote about the difficulties he had encountered, the obstacles he had surmounted, and the tasks yet outstanding. Michael felt a weight being lifted off his shoulders as he spoke. He had been meaning to say this for a long time, and it had nothing to do with his work as a surgeon. He was lost in his writing, barely conscious of the passing of hours, or the growing clamor in the hallway outside his office. He was shocked out of his trance by a knock on the door. He screamed out, "Come in," and hurriedly saved his paper. Emily stuck her head in and grinned broadly at the sight of him. "You're right there. I've searched everywhere for you. Are things going well for you? Following yesterday night, that is." Michael sat back in his chair and thought about the query. He spoke carefully and replied, "You know, I think I am. Actually, believe that I'm above average." Emily arched an eyebrow before fully entering the office and shutting the door. "What do you mean?" Michael indicated the screen of his computer. "I've been writing about my experiences and what occurred last night, and I've come to a realization. Emily, this is a special chance for us." As he spoke, he got up and paced the little office. "Consider it. We are at the cutting edge of medical research. We are now being noticed by others. What if we directed that focus toward addressing social as well as medical issues?" Emily's forehead wrinkled as she listened carefully. "You're talking about using our platform to speak out against racism and discrimination." Michael nodded, becoming more animated as he explained what he thought. "Exactly. We may start modest, like writing an opinion piece in a medical journal, stressing the value of diversity in the medical field. From there, though, who knows? We could really make an impact if we planned workshops and gave talks at conferences." Emily's eyes brightened with anticipation. "Michael, that is very clever. Indeed, you're correct. We now have a platform. We ought to make use of it." Another tap on the door interrupted their conversation about the prospects. It was Dr. Deepak this time, appearing a little flustered. "Michael, Emily," he uttered in a distressed tone. "You need to see this." With his iPad out, he displayed a local news website. Michael's heart sank upon reading the headline, "Prestigious Alabama Restaurant Accused of Racial Profiling." The story described what had happened the night before, citing an unnamed witness to the incident. Although Michael's name was omitted, it was clear From the description who the well-known African-American physician was, Arjun stated, "It's everywhere," as he browsed through further news websites about it. Social media is exploding. There are calls for the eatery to be boycotted. A peculiar sense of relief mixed with anger at the issue being made public without his agreement, and dread of possible reaction overcame Michael. For better or worse, the truth was now publicly known. Emily touched him on the shoulder. "What do you want to do, Michael?" Michael inhaled deeply as his thoughts began to swirl. Things altered as a result, but his resolve remained unchanged. If anything, it increased the significance of his earlier concepts. Hardly saying, "We stick to the plan," he remarked. "But we must go quickly. We must move quickly to prevent this story from spreading." He looked up at Arjun. "Are you able to contact the hospital's public relations department? They will be crucial in helping us to draft a statement." With a nod, Arjun took out his phone immediately. On it, Michael then gave Emily a look. "Do you recall the opinion piece we were just discussing? I believe we should move quickly on it. Could you please proofread what I've already written?" Emily's determined gaze brightened. "Yes, without a doubt. Come on, let's do this." Michael felt an overwhelming sense of thankfulness as his teammates jumped into action. This was not his only battle. In the ensuing hours, Michael's office turned into a hive of activity. The PR crew from the hospital showed up, bringing a rush of phone calls and lightning-fast conversations. Michael was in the thick of things, walking a tightrope between telling it like it is and not losing his cool under pressure. They had worked up a statement by mid-afternoon that Michael was happy with. It called for a wider conversation on racism in society, denounced racial profiling in all of its manifestations, and acknowledged the occurrence without naming the eatery. Michael felt a mixture of resolution and nervousness as he got ready to make the statement to the media gathering outside the hospital. He had never desired this type of attention, but now that it was upon him, he was resolved to make the most of it. As Michael emerged onto the hospital steps, he was slightly taken aback by the multitude of cameras and microphones in front of him. Taking a deep breath, he reminded himself of all the difficult operations he had gone through. This constituted just another sort of obstacle. "Good afternoon," he said in a firm voice. "I am Michael Owen, MD. I work here at Mater Dei University Hospital as a heart surgeon. My coworkers and I were celebrating a medical advancement last night when we came across a case of racial profiling." Michael felt the weight of his words as he spoke. Now, he was speaking not only for himself, but for a great number of people who had gone through similar things. He described the suffering and embarrassment of having his skin tone used as a grounds for suspicion. However, he also expressed optimism for a time when such things would never happen. "This isn't just about one incident or one restaurant," he said. "It's about what every one of us must do to build a society that is truly equitable. As healthcare providers, our goal is to promote healing. I'm urging everyone here to make a commitment to mending the scars left by bigotry and prejudice in our neighborhood today." There was a pause after he was done talking, before the questions started. Michael tried his best to address them, always bringing the discussion back to the more important matters at hand. He felt a feeling of purpose and exhaustion when he eventually re-entered the hospital. Emily was waiting for him, pride lighting up her face. "Michael, that was amazing," she murmured, embracing him. "You spoke for so many people today." Michael gave him a hug back, feeling the stress of the day start to lessen. "Many thanks, Emily. All I can hope is that it has an impact." A text message buzzed Michael's phone as they made their way back to his office. "Henry sent it. I saw your speech. I'm proud of you, younger sibling. Give me a call as soon as you can." A surge of emotion passed over Michael as he grinned. Even though he knew the journey ahead would not be simple, he felt prepared to tackle whatever lay ahead with this kind of support. Michael's life became a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and conversations over the course of the following several days. After going viral, the tale sparked national discussions about systematic racism and racial profiling. Michael was forced to take on the role of spokesperson for the larger campaign against prejudice, as well as for his individual experience. Balancing his new public role with his hospital obligations was a demanding job. But Michael was motivated by a purpose he had never experienced. Not only was he improving the operating room, but also society as a whole. Michael was getting ready to leave the hospital one evening, roughly a week after the tragedy, when he got an unexpected visitor. It was the lay manager, appearing apprehensive and uncomfortable in the hospital hallway. "Dr. Owen," the man murmured, while shaking his palms. "Perhaps I'm not bothering you. I wanted to personally apologize to you for what transpired that evening. We are examining all of our policies and have started new training sessions for our employees. Although it's not a perfect solution, I wanted you to know that we're making an effort." Michael met the man's eyes and saw the sincere regret in them. "Thank you," he eventually said. "Thank you for addressing this and for your actions. It's an initial step." The manager was relieved as he nodded. "Yes, it is. Once more, sincerely apologize for what transpired." There was a sense of closure for Michael as the manager departed. For him and a great many others, this had been a pivotal moment. Even though there was still a lot of work to be done, he was more determined than ever to continue advocating for change in his field and in the wider society. For a little period, Michael observed the man and noticed the sincere regret in his eyes. "I appreciate you coming," he stated at the end. "It's true that what happened isn't erased, but it's a start. Continue working hard and inspire others to follow suit." A flicker of optimism came across Michael as the manager walked away. One action, one discussion at a time, change was possible. Michael thought about how much his life had changed in only 1 week. As he drove home that evening, his goal was to become an exceptional surgeon and rescue lives while performing surgery. He was now battling on a far larger stage for equality and justice. As soon as Michael turned into his driveway, he knew it was the road he was supposed to pursue. Even though it wasn't the one he had anticipated, he was prepared for the struggle, even if it was far from done. He was improving the world with every step, every word, and every deed. Not only for himself, but also for everyone who would follow in his footsteps. Michael had a fresh feeling of purpose as soon as he stepped inside his house. With the assurance that he was changing things one day at a time, he was prepared to take on all of the problems and opportunities that were ahead. Michael woke up the next morning to the sound of his phone beeping nonstop. He reached for it with bleary eyes, unsure of what pressing medical issue might be requiring his attention at such an early hour. He widened in amazement as he scanned through the notifications. It was an invitation to appear on a national morning news show, to discuss his experiences and the larger problem of racial profiling, not at all a medical emergency. Michael awoke abruptly and sat up in bed. This was a fantastic opportunity to reach a larger audience with his message. But it also required him to become even more visible to the public, thus putting him at risk of criticism and scrutiny. He inhaled deeply as he considered his alternatives. Michael considered his options for a short while before deciding. He took the invitation and gave the producer a call. He had to take every chance to speak up if he was going to see any meaningful change. Michael's head was constantly buzzing with ideas on what he would say on the broadcast as he got ready for the day. He realized he had to exercise caution, but he also wanted to be succinct and precise in using his platform to inspire and educate. The entire discussion could be ruined by one mispronounced word. Emily was excitedly waiting for Michael outside his office when he arrived at the hospital. "I am aware of the television appearance," she remarked, her eyes gleaming. "This is huge, Michael." Excited and nervous at the same time, Michael nodded. "Yes, it is. I'm not sure if I'm prepared for this degree of exposure, though." What happens if I make a mistake? Emily gave him a comforting pat on the arm. You're not going to, Michael. You have a deep understanding of this matter. Just like you did at the press conference. Speak from the heart. And never forget that we are all behind you. Her remarks gave him more self-assurance. Many thanks, Emily. Without you, I don't know what I would do. Michael saw a stack of letters on his desk as they entered his office. He inquired, "What's all this?" Emily grinned. "If you can believe it, fan mail. People from all throughout the nation have been contacting to thank you for speaking up and to share their own tales. I figured before your TV appearance, you would like to read a few." Michael took up one of the letters, and, as he read the sincere words of encouragement, his throat constricted. Though he had always understood cognitively that his words were having an impact, it was overwhelming to see the physical proof. As Michael got ready for his impending procedures over the next few hours, he found himself going back to the letters whenever he had some free time. Every one of them strengthened his determination to never give up and to use his voice to change things. The day of the television appearance came around far too soon. Michael discovered himself in a slick, contemporary studio with bright lighting and a busy team. He went over the main points he wanted to make while he sat in the makeup chair in an attempt to de-stress. "Dr. Owen, we're going to start in 5, a production assistant announced. Michael inhaled deeply, adjusted his necktie, and entered the set. He was received cordially by the host, Amber Chen, a well-known journalist. She said, "Dr. Owen, thank you for joining us this morning." As soon as the cameras began to pan, "Your narrative has spurred a national dialogue on racial profiling. Could you briefly describe the events that transpired at the restaurant that evening?" Michael gave a nod, his voice firm, as he related what had happened. He saw Amber's demeanor shift from professional curiosity to sincere concern as he continued. She remarked, "That must have been a humiliating experience." After he was done, "How did it make you feel?" Michael hesitated, thinking over what he was going to say. "It was embarrassing," he said. "But it was frustrating more than anything else. In an instant, I went from being a successful surgeon, celebrating a significant medical advancement with my colleagues, to nothing more than the color of my skin, regardless of their accomplishments or social standing. Many people of color can relate to this feeling all too well." Amber gave a contemplative nod. "You mentioned that there is a bigger issue with this situation. Could you please provide more details?" Michael had been waiting for this opportunity. His voice had a hint of passion as he leaned forward. "Yes, without a doubt, that night's events are not an uncommon occurrence for me. It is a sign of a far bigger problem, which is the enduring systematic racism in our culture. It exists in our organizations, in our laws, and regrettably, in the unintentional prejudice of a great deal of people." Michael could see the effect his words were having as he spoke more. Amber asked perceptive follow-up questions and showed complete engagement. Behind the cameras, the crew members were paying close attention, with some even nodding in agreement. As their time was coming to an end, Amber said, "Dr. Owen, what do you hope will come from sharing your story?" Michael grinned, hope rising in his veins. "Hopefully, sparks discussion. It should force people to consider their own prejudices and presumptions. Above all, I hope it motivates action. In order to build a society that is more just and equal, we are all responsible. Being non-racist is insufficient. We must take proactive measures to combat racism." Michael felt relieved and accomplished at the end of the segment. He thought that by saying what he had to say, audiences around the nation would find his comments compelling. His phone buzzed as he was leaving the studio, and it was Emily texting him, "You were amazing. Everyone in the hospital was observing. You're trending, therefore you should check out the responses online." Though he was still not quite at ease with his newfound celebrity, Michael laughed. But he felt a fresh sense of purpose as he made his way back to the hospital, prepared to resume his surgical duties. And he was only getting started. He was changing things, not just in the operating room, but in the larger world as well.